Alright guys, so the packaging is quite simple. Quite a simple packaging. Just rolled up. Like many other pads you've probably had. 500 by 500 my one since I have the older version. And yeah, pretty simple packaging. But it works, so nothing too fancy about the packaging. It's just a tube. Comes out of here and then, that's it. So I have the original version of this pad, so 500 by 500 millimeters, 3mm thickness. Don't know if you can see that well, but perfect size for me because I've got very long arms, so I like to sit more on the desk like this. But if you're buying the new version, make sure to look out for the size. If you're looking for 500 by 500, the new version is only 480 by 400 millimeters. So if you need a 500 by 500 pad, you might want to look somewhere else, or buy the previous model, which is this one. This pad has a very simple design with a clean logo, what is printed onto the pad, so it doesn't affect the performance in that area at all. It has a polyester mesh surface with a medium rubber base, which is here. It doesn't have any issues with moving on my desk unless I push and move it with a lot of pressure, but if you're just gaming, it's not going to slip that easy. As you can see here, I'm putting a fair amount of pressure on it. It's only moving a couple millimeters, so it's a pretty good design of materials from what I can tell and from all the tests I've done on it. So yeah, design of materials, fine for me, no problem there. Alright guys, as for the stitching of this pad, the new one has stitching, but the version I have is unstitched, so I can't comment on the stitching of the newer pads and everything like that, or this pad even. But the newer ones do come with stitched edges, but the stitch edges, well, these non-stitch edges haven't affected me whatsoever, and it's still pretty comfortable for the old version in my opinion. So yeah, there is an option for you to buy it with stitched edges, but me personally, I didn't want it and I bought it secondhand, so I didn't really have the option to have stitched edges, but to me, it doesn't matter. The pad has a textured surface, what is pretty soft. The texture is more comfortable than that Artisan Zero, to me anyway, because the Artisan Zero feels sticky to me on my palm and around here, especially when I get sweaty, and I don't feel the need to use any hoodies or sleeves on this pad, even though it is a textured pad. So as for the speed of this pad, it feels to be on the slower side, pretty close to zero, but with less initial friction. The initial friction doesn't feel tuggy like when it does on the zero when doing like slower tracking movements like this. Stopping power seems to be pretty good on this pad as well. As you can see here, stops pretty well. Like, it's not gonna affect your TAC FPS gameplay, so very good for tracking and TAC FPS games. All around good balanced pad. So the verticality of this pad feels weird when doing tracking, like vertical tracking anyway, due to the weaving itself, but that could just be a me thing. It's good for everything else in general. There's no speed difference with the horizontal and vertical movements, or the X and Y axis if you watch a lot of mousepad reviews. But to me, when going up, it feels weird on the skin, specifically in my pinky finger here, and that causes me to get less scores in vertical only scenarios, like smooth your vertical outward slow. Okay, so for the performance of this pad, it performs well in all the games for me, especially tracking games like Apex and Overwatch. It isn't the best for TAC FPS games, but I like the freedom and ease of it, so the initial friction really, since it feels so unique in a way. So I'm still able to perform pretty well with this pad. The Spyre website states that the Loque is a balanced speed, but in my opinion it's more on the controlled side. Performance for aim trainers is good, but if you're doing just vertical tracking, like smooth your vertical outward slow as I stated before, it tends to feel awkward. But other scenarios such as like PTI, Aimer's PTI, or Precise Orb is fine. So it's just specific vertical and not bounce scenarios. The performance is all around good for this pad, in my opinion anyway. So yeah. So the cost and availability of this pad runs around $30, although I got mine second hand for £20, but I live in the UK, so it's harder to get it here since we can only get it directly from Spyre website or Lethal Gaming Gear. It's available in other places from Max Gaming, but it would be nice to see on Zert Gaming Mods for those of us in the UK, since it was pretty hard to get my hands on this, and I had to buy it second hand. The pros and cons of this pad. Pros of this pad is it's pretty affordable, it lays flat out of the box, and it doesn't move on my disc unless pushed fairly hard as stated before. The speed is good and consistent. I perform well in games with it. I do enjoy using it for aim trainers as well, every game really. Surface is soft, doesn't irritate my skin like some other texture pads tend to do, like the Heian. So yeah, that's a bonus. Or the Skypad. The 500 by 500 size is great. Not sure why they've decided to change the size to 480 by 400 millimeters, but that's their option. I'm guessing cut back on material cost or something. So yeah, some cons of this pad is that the texture feels a bit weird for the verticality and can annoy me when I'm doing vertical movements. I don't notice this much in game though, as I do with specific aim training scenarios, like smooth your vertical. Some people don't like non-stitch pads, but for me, it feels perfectly fine. The newer version comes with stitch edges, so keep that in mind if you want it, and this one did also have an option to come stitched. So my overall thoughts on this pad is, it's a good pad, and I would recommend it. For only $30, you may as well give it a try. It has a unique feeling, and one of the best pads I have tried. The only issue I've had is a verticality for me due to the weaving feeling a bit weird on my hand and fingers. So that is really weird for me, and it kind of annoys me, but you know, it's whatever. It's a perfect size, 500 by 500, and would work well for most sensitivities. Obviously it's 500 by 500. Really good for tracking specific games. For TAC FPS games, it may take a bit to get used to, especially if you're coming from an Artisan Zero or a Game Sense Radar, since the initial friction is a lot quicker than those, in my opinion, and it's more easy to glide. So yeah, overall, I would recommend this pad if you can get it for $30, but that is minus shipping, so yeah, it's a good pad, and overall, I would recommend it, especially for $30, it's a really good deal.